like and subscribe. Now, what are early signs of an abusive partner? Look what you made me do. Oof, this brought back bad memories. My ex would break all the things in his house and hit himself, then blame me for it cause I wanted to break up with him. Oh, look what you made me do. There are a lot of patterns of abuse. Some abusers isolate the people they are with, so that they have no one to reach out to. They make the victim rely upon them, and thus the stakes of leaving or speaking out are the loss of the only person you have left. Some abusers make their abuse seem normal, and so they slowly raise the temperature to a boil, ever slowly increasing their worst behavior. And if the victim reacts negatively, they lower the heat for a while, and spend time acting like it was a one-time thing and they didn't mean anything by it, and it won't happen again. But it will of course get worse. There is a pattern of abuse that is sort of like a yo-yo, where a person will do everything for you, make you seem special, bomb you with love, just give you everything you could dream of, and then slip some abuse in and use the love they've blasted you with as leverage. After all I've done for you, you would say act like my abuse is the problem. Can't you see that I care? If I didn't care I wouldn't have done this, etc. Like family dysfunction. Abusers come in a lot of flavors. Sometimes abuse can just be periods of neglect and normalizing a coldness towards the other person and downplaying any of that person's needs. It takes a lot of work to keep a relationship healthy, and even people who are not generally abusive can in combination create a pretty unhealthy situation long term. It is helpful, I think, to consider some of the signs of a stable relationship to know what an unstable one might be. Stable partnerships are two independent people who act with compassion towards their partner, but often not just towards their partner. They have a circle of people they care about. They have friends and family that would vouch for them in a healthy way. Both people in the relationship allow room for the other person to be who they are. There is respect for boundaries. There is consideration for the consequences to their actions. A relationship that can thrive grows at a moderate pace often. It is a small flag if the relationship grows too quickly. Oftentimes a healthy relationship requires both partners to be able to admit having been wrong after some reasonable length of argument or disagreement. They are capable of apologizing and tending to any emotional harm that can happen in an argument. Both people are willing to put work into the health of the relationship and the health of the other, but not generally at a sacrifice of their own, especially at the beginning of relationships. That relation changes a lot, I feel, when people have been together for a very long time. Those are just general things. Not everyone has learned to be good at some of them, but you want to be with someone who is willing to learn how to be those things, willing to put work in on themselves in that way. It would be hard for them to accept no as an answer. Just gonna pop this here a seconds. Men, you have as much of a right to say no. It doesn't make you less of a man. My ex was a scumbag and manipulated me into some unpleasant things. I didn't think I could say no because of both her being manipulative and society seeing me as less of a man for refusing sex. Not taking no for an answer and pushing boundaries, but acting like they are pushing you as a favor to you, and it's for your own good. Even more subtle, overriding your opinions. My ex would literally say, "You don't want that, you want this," when doing things like choosing off a menu at a restaurant or picking out an outfit to wear. It was so subtle I didn't really pick up on it as a red flag, but as time went on, I realized how it was a way of denying my autonomy, setting me up for attempts at greater levels of control. When in everything you do, they always make it sound like it's nothing important, downgrading it, belittling, anything of the sort. You're never as good as them, your hobbies or work isn't as hard as this, and you feel like you don't matter. I'm going through this RN. In our marriage I feel like a side character in his story. I can't explain very well how it feels. This and its ugly cousin. Belittling your worries, fears and things you went through. If you can't have a mature conversation about the relationship and what you feel you need without being told you are actually the manipulative one, run. Because they will try to tell you that you are manipulative to manipulate you into never saying your opinion. Yeah. This one is an absolute mind F. Had me questioning my every word and action. It was so indescribably exhausting. If something hurt my feelings then I was being a self-centered bee and a crybaby. I also got thrown to the floor by my hair for trying to stop him hurting himself. It of course wasn't his fault. I knew he had PTSD and I just shouldn't have come up behind him. Guess I should have let him continue smashing his hand with my frying pan. WTF Brad, who even does that? I also tried to break up with him so many times I lost count, but it always got turned around as me abandoning him because of his mental illness. So yeah, adding another red flag. If they won't let you break up with them, fine run. Controlling, demeaning, knocks you down, talks badly about everyone in your life, doesn't respect you, it isn't fixable and it will get worse, talks badly about everyone in your life, yep, and they have strange relationships with the people, few who continue to deal with them actually in their lives, and they talk them too. When you are nervous next to them and relaxed when not. This goes for friendships also. What if I'm nervous around everyone? Holy moly this. Threatening to break up with you after every argument. Worse yet, threatening suicide if you break up with them. Is there any good way to deal with this? You obviously wouldn't want someone to commit suicide, but still want to get out of the relationship, so is there anything you can say or do in that situation? Controlling behavior, always assuming control and undermining your ability to do anything yourself. Near the end of my last relationship, I couldn't even pick the correct things. When grocery shopping, he'd immediately pick it up out of the cart and then start lecturing me about making sure I'd pick the cheapest option. You cold gotten this instead. Put that back, we'll get it somewhere else, etc. As a grown woman, being lectured about my choice of chicken in the middle of a grocery store was super embarrassing. Now I buy whatever the hell I want, and it's amazing how liberating something so simple can feel. For me, I could never go anywhere without him. Grocery, doctors, you name it. I especially hated going to the doctor because they'd ask if it's okay for him to be there with me while he was also in the room, so I was afraid of saying no. Same goes for the dentist. He just expected that he'd allowed to be with me, and no one really questioned it until COVID. But he never allowed me too much time out of his sight. I couldn't even be in the bathroom for too long before he'd start asking me where I was. I went grocery shopping with my ex, and she did something like this. Everything I picked up she told me to put back for some reason or other. We drove to work together. We worked close by each other, and she would scream at me if I chose a different route that we both knew was just as fast. She would text me while I was playing music with my friends and complain if I didn't respond in time. This, even going out to eat. Oh, not Italian. Let's do Thai. Do you not want to wear the blue shirt instead? I'll just order for us both. You don't need dessert. Nothing is ever odd in itself. But altogether you don't get to make decisions without them telling you what to pick or correcting you. I look back and this is the biggest, brightest flag I missed. Ex-boyfriend, talking to buddies. Hey guys, watch this. Turns to me and says, "Bragadouch, go lay down." I left the room and went into the bedroom and laid on the bed. Literally was treated like a dog. Gets angry and offended when confronted about their own issues and gaslights you into saying sorry, or that it is you who has to do better in the end. Yep, they start by saying you are wrong. When you prove them they are wrong, it's pity parade time. Yeah, you're always right. I'm just so stupid and shy. You are so much more clever than me. And in a clap, they became the victim. And then you start walking on eggshells and hyper evaluating what you say before you say it, because you're never quite sure what's going to set them off and turn into a fight. But if you ever try to open up to them about how you feel, like you're having to walk on eggshells around them, it becomes your fault. That's not healthy to do. How could you think so little of them to feel like you need to do that? Why would you act that way around them? And suddenly a discussion about your feelings turns into a fight about how you've hurt them. Again, rinse and repeat. If it's never their fault, especially watch out for fake apologies that don't actually acknowledge fault or carefully deflect blame back onto you. Look, I'm sorry you seem to have a problem with how awesome I am, and you can't make a decent sandwich. This applies to friendships too. This also applies to family, of course. Can't forget the abusive sister. Yes, one of the biggest fights we had was when he was driving and he tapped another car in a parking lot. It apparently was my fault that his foot was on the gas and his hands were on the wheel, and that happened. They will find ways to separate you from friends and loved ones. Came here to tell this from personal experience. First, they always insist to come along when you are going with your friends. Then they start sulking and make you feel miserable for bringing them along until you decide not to go. My ex-wife, lol, would throw a fit if I did anything without her, even early on, but never wanted to actually go. If she did, she would make an excuse or we had to leave, and throw a fit if we didn't. This is really key and there are a lot of other great signs, but this is the first step always. Begins with subtle attempts to control you. They may even make you feel special, as if they really care. The next stage is often less subtle attempts to demean your friends and slowly cut you off from them. Of course it's cloaked in claims of loving you so much that they want what's best for you and that your friends aren't good enough for you. At first any attempts to resist are met with played up hurt feelings by the abuser and claims that you don't love them enough. It eventually evolves into verbal and emotional abuse. By the time the physical abuse cycle begins, it's often too late to emotionally extricate yourself from the relationship. Manipulation. One thing I found with someone's relationship, someone I care about, was that she's with him because she's afraid of what will happen to him if she leaves. So things like I won't ever find anyone else if you leave me and I'll be depressed, etc etc. If they are making you feel guilty for leaving, that's not a good relationship. Make it difficult for you to meet / connect / spend time with family or friends. What's the opposite of this? I practically beg my girlfriend to go spend time with her friends, and any time she does, super rare, she's like, I feel bad leaving you alone. Codependence would be the word. Just be gentle with her and let her know you love her, but that it's healthy to see other people too. She'll probably realize that and start spending more time with friends, and it won't be a massive issue. I'd add to this wanting to always come with you to see these people, or showing up to places you didn't invite them to. My abusive late husband insisted on coming everywhere with me. My ex very slowly made it impossible to see any friends that weren't his, and I rarely saw my family. I didn't realize what was happening while it was happening. He also had to know where I was at every moment. I didn't realize how abusive a relationship was until I started dating someone new. I would ask him permission to hang out with my friends or apologize that I missed a phone call, and he would look at me funny. You don't need to ask me every time you want to do something. It took a couple of years to break those habits, and now I'm fully other side of the spectrum. I get extremely annoyed when my boyfriend asks me where I am and what I'm doing. It feels controlling. The damage has definitely been done, and I have a lot of work to do on myself because of it. They don't respect your boundaries. I never realized how important boundaries are in relationships until I dated someone who actively bulldozed through them. I never realized how important they are until I kept nudging the line further and further away from what boundaries I set, and by the end of it all I realized I had no boundaries left. Just don't kill me, and that was pretty effed up, and they subtly push them until you find yourself tolerating things you would usually run for the hills for. Then by the time you realize they've pushed you, inch by inch, to a place where you don't want to be, you look like the crazy one when you try to reinforce your boundaries. Your feelings don't matter, and no matter what happens, everything is your fault. You're trying to talk about a problem, and by the end of the conversation you're the one apologizing. My ex-boyfriend never once uttered the words, "I'm sorry" straightforwardly. If anything, it was always, "I'm sorry you feel that way." Hates your friends' relatives, and will repeatedly make critical comments to isolate you. Picks fights over silly things to test boundaries. Makes out that they're the only one who cares about you to make you stay/rely on them. Repeatedly brings up the "favors they've done" to get you to comply. Makes promises they never keep, even the little ones, because it makes you look crazy and abusive when you get upset. Subtle criticism of your clothes, body and behavior, so you'll be worn down and have low self-esteem because it makes you more compliant. Gaslighting, so you question your sanity. Controlling the income/stealing money, so you rely on them. Spreading lies to those in your inner and outer circle to isolate you. This isn't an exhaustive list, just some of what I went through before the abuse escalated to sexual and physical abuse. Just remember, sometimes you have to trust your instincts, and sometimes you have to forgive yourself, because you won't see the warning signs until it's too late. My ex went so far as to blame a medical condition for him raping me. He never had that condition, it just fit his narrative. so he could blame me. Yes, when I was trying to figure out if my relationship was abusive. Hint, if you're ever asking yourself this question, just get out. I didn't think he was isolating me. I could still see my friends and family, and did often. But then I realized I was always having to pick between them. He hated my grandparents. He hated my parents. My mom was a bee. He didn't like my siblings. They were boring. He didn't like my friends. They were boring. So anytime I'd want to spend time with my family/friends, I was having to choose between seeing them and seeing him. Major holidays, family get-togethers, friends coming in town, it was almost always him or them. And if he would go, he would find a way to make the experience unenjoyable. And as far as the subtle criticism, I want people to know that jokes count. It's not just serious statements, making mean jokes about the way you look, or act, or your preferences, etc. And if you ask them not to make jokes like that anymore, an abuser will tell you it was just a joke, you're being too sensitive, and will continue to use the jokes as ammunition. A healthy partner will not do this. If they behave badly towards the people they feel most comfortable with, parents, siblings, close friends, they may be an absolute angel with you now that you're still in the beginning, but when they get comfortable with you too, they'll treat you the same. Lying, blaming you for random things / causing arguments, small acts of violence, physical or mental, threats of violence or name calling etc. Limiting contact with family and friends, belittling you or your opinions, saying they're right even if they are not, trying to control what you do or where you go, manipulating, changing emotions fast, like being angry and then trying to make you feel sorry for something, or apologizing randomly but not really acting any different later. These to name a few, but obviously it depends on the person. When they show no pity or remorse for something they did that hurt you, massive red flag. DARVO. When every ex is crazy. Yep, every ex, and also random other people, are either crazy or rude or stupid colleagues, shop assistants, family members, wait staff, yada yada. It's always other people causing incidents, whether real or perceived. Every ex was crazy. Every boss ever was a dick. They didn't graduate because of that one professor who hated them after they corrected them on their mistake. Their siblings don't talk to them because they are jealous of their success. They had friends once, but they were toxic, and they don't need that kind of drama in their lives. They don't go to this and that place because the bartenders are awful. Generally, the world is out to get them because they are too nice. Never taking responsibility for their actions. Never letting you educate them on things you actually know about because they think it makes them look stupid. Lying, especially lying to family members or best friends. Gaslighting. Somehow, everything is always your fault and never theirs, and they'll beat you so much with their version of the truth, you start to believe it. They will belittle your argument or dismiss it. Gaslighting. There you go. Making up words again. Do you know how ridiculous you sound? Are you the guy who married my ex-girlfriend? Sorry you had a kid with her. Now you gotta deal with her for the rest of your life. Having to ask a question to yourself like this, if you don't trust them, it's probably not worth being in a mo. Lack of respect for your property or privacy. I took the most informative social psychology class in college. The professor made sure to make repeated points on anything that had to do with manipulations in relationships. He said the biggest worry for any abuser is that the victim will simply leave, so they always manipulate the victim into thinking that this relationship is their best option. On a simple psychological level, if you have no better options, you will always choose to stay. One of the most common ways abusers make you believe that staying is your best option often goes undetected and is quite subtle, but it's little phrases with wording like "no one will ever love you as much as I love you" or anything along those lines, subtly insinuating that this is the best you will ever have it. It doesn't seem like much, but mix that with tons or repetition and you sometimes, after making a mistake and it really starts to sink in as a fact for the victim without them even realizing it. It could be something like "wow, you messed whatever up really bad. You're lucky I'm with you" to always fix these things to both put the victim down as well as there is nowhere else to go. Without this mental trap, abusive relationships would never go on, as long as they tend to. Really makes you think differently about the wording of a lot of love songs though. rushing the pace of the relationship. This would include things like saying I love you very early, moving in together, or pushing to within a matter of a few months being together, pushing for marriage in a similarly short amount of time, ignoring small boundaries and or trying to make you feel bad for having said boundaries, feeling entitled to the bulk of your attention and time, which usually results in guilt or anger being used against you for spending time with others or on other things. All of their exes were horrible people, without exception, according to them, at least. Love bombing. This should be higher. It's harder to realize when it's happening. It feels so good until it turns toxic. Can you or can someone elaborate this? The abuser will go over the top with signs of affection. Constant calls, texts, letters, messages about how they love you, buying gifts for no reason repeatedly ranging from small gifts every day to huge gifts every once in a while. On the surface it can seem like they are just an attentive and giving partner, but lover bombing goes further than that as it's often used to indoctrinate the victim into feeling like they can't complain. It's very similar to gaslighting, in that the victim isn't sure that the abuser is abusive because they do say something different to what they experience. It's also used after actual abuse as an apology to try and win the victim back on side, beat them around a little, then pay for a holiday and wait on them hand and foot for 2 weeks in the hopes that they forgive the attack, slip right back into abuse a few weeks later, and repeat the cycle of trying to keep them with lavish gifts. Not everyone who lover bombs is abusive, but it's definitely used by some abusers in their playbook, enough so that it's probably more common for abusers than actual attentive caring partners. When they are surrounded by a-holes, ex was an a-hole, boss is an a-hole, this thing happened today, and can you believe what happened? Their bad luck with other people seems uncanny when it's a lot early on. You're the only one who understands. Never met anyone like you before. It's a real connection. Soulmates. They say they love you quite fast. It's a whirlwind of attention and validation. They care quite a bit about who you hang out with and why. They have trust issues that they really want you to understand and try and work with. Any kind of physical aggression at all towards anyone or anything. Throwing their keys onto the table angrily after a bad day. Punching the wall. Driving erratically, refusing to give you space during an argument, including following you if you leave the room. Also shouting or insults leveled at anyone, not just you. Low empathy, finding other people's misfortune funny. Pranks that aren't well received. A win-lose attitude to life, as though other people's good stuff somehow takes away from them. Telling you that you're overreacting. Sensitive, looking for the worst, just like their abusive ex. Paranoid, also accusing you of feelings and actions you don't have and are not expressing, like anger, anxiety, insecurity, being controlling, passive aggression, such as the silent treatment, ignoring messages, walking out on you and not returning, and breaking plans / commitments unilaterally, sexual entitlement, such as pushing kinks, demanding sex and pouting when denied, showing sexual jealousy and blaming you for it, encouraging you early on to take actions that make you dependent on them in some way, such as moving in with them, quitting your job so they can take care of you, moving out of the area with them, encouraging you to limit your contact with friends or family members who see these red flags, by telling you that they are jealous of your happiness, toxic and enmeshed, and other things of that nature. Also relevant are estrangements from their own family, if they are the one who's been kicked out, or especially their kids won't speak to them. Be on guard. There can be good reasons for this, but you have to be careful. Jealousy, wanting to know your constant whereabouts, begin isolating you from friends. They are never wrong. Ultimatums and guilt tripping. Well, I'll just never talk again when you mention something they said was hurtful to you. If they hurt you in an undeniable way, they will often make huge gestures to make up for it. Be overbearingly sorry until you feel forced to make it okay for them, to tell them everything is fine and they didn't do anything too bad, and you forgive them, and they are a good person, even though you were the person who was hurt. They'll make you be the person to make it better. Not interested in how you are, how your day's been, etc. When you ask them how they are, etc.